Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation. And look who's back to the channel. We've got David Botas. How are you, mate?
Pretty good, pretty good. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you back. Long time no see. So David has introduced me to a band around Christmas time called Beach Fossils. So as you're aware, David and I are in another YouTube channel called the Contrarians, and we had a little bit of a Kris Kringle thing going where we would exchange albums and do a review. David gave me Beach Fossils Somersault from 2017, and boy, what a joy to listen to that album. It just so happens that the Beach Fossils, I think a week or two ago, released their first album in about 6 years, and it's called Bunny. So I thought it was timely to get David on the show. Let's talk about the album, what we think about it, how it compares with the rest of the catalogue, and just talk in general Beach Fossils. So, David, I'll throw to you. What was your first impression of this album when you put it in the CD player?
Well, for one, it's interesting that this album was released exactly 6 years to the day. They both came out. I don't know if it's internationally the same release date, but at least in the US, Beach Fossils is a New York-based band. They released their last album, Somersault, on June 2nd of 2017, and then a couple weeks ago, June 2nd, actually like 2 weeks ago, they released which is their fourth full-length album, and it was supposed to come out like right around the time of when the pandemic hit. So I like the album quite a bit. I'm a big Beach Fossils fan, so I was really rooting. I thought that their last album was a triumph. I thought Somersault was and is pretty much a masterpiece. So I had this trepidation to where a band reaches this new benchmark. Are they going to keep it up? Are they going to change too much? If they don't keep it up and if they just sort of copy what they did the last time and they don't have anything new to bring to the table after 6 years, is that going to be kind of lame? So yeah, when I listen to it, I've listened to the album at least like 10 times now, and I feel like I still need to I feel like my expectations on what the album should sound like are still up in the air. I think the jury's still out on how I feel on this album and their catalog, but it's a good album because I like the band quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just as a little bit of background, this band is basically the brainchild of the guitarist, lead writer, lead singer, Dustin Paysor. Sorry.
That's all right.
So there's four gentlemen in the band. Dustin's the main spearhead and composer in the band. And when the band started, it was just him. It was just him back in 2010 with the first Beach Fossils album, self-titled, and it basically was an extremely minimalist, sort of like an updated like surf rock type of sound, if you can think about what that might sound like in 2010. And it sort of was this, it spearheaded a bit of a revival in the dream pop genre, which is a genre that we've covered. Shoegaze, it's kind of like the sibling genre to that from like the late 80s and early 90s. And what this album sounds like is a return to that minimalist sound. It sounds like that first album was like a demo for what this sounds like now. And I think that as time's gone on, and they did another EP after that, and What a Pleasure back in 2011. They did a second full length in 2013, Clash the Truth. Like that was a darker album that has like these post-punk elements into it. By that time, it was a full-fledged band, touring band. It's not just him in his room sort of doing like the one-man band playing all the instruments himself. I believe the first album is everything he played himself on it, probably like on his computer in his home studio. So you see how the band's kind of evolved, and this is it's kind of awkward because like they've reached these a lot of what would I say, like a lot of versatility in how they compose, and they just sort of like went back to saying less is more and let's just go minimalist as a band Whereas, like I said, the first album was just him writing everything. So I don't know where the band's gonna go after this, but I've already gone on too long about that. Like, how do you feel about it?
Well, and thank you. That was really well said, and sort of sets the scene. I thought that was like putting on a comfortable pair of shoes. I love dream pop. I love dream rock. It's got the elements of lo-fi. There's a little bit of shoegaze. It's got all the elements that I like about this band. And it's a headphones album because although it's minimalist and spare, there's instrumentation. There's these little subtle instrumental bits that just make it so rewarding. And it's one that demands that you have to listen more than once. It's not an instantaneous love album, but the albums that I love and hold dear to my heart are the ones that you play again and again and again, and you get more out of it. And the more I play this album, the more I like it. And there's a couple of songs here, which I will cover, that are almost, I'd have to say, the songs of the year so far. I like it that much.
All right.
It is, I think this is a really, really solid and good album. Lyrically, there's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of about youth of today finding themselves. It's a post-COVID album. I think it was written during COVID, and imagine being cooped up in an apartment building in New York. I get that sense. And then being able to party and be free and do things that young people do. That's the sort of album I think this is all about. So maybe, if you don't mind, we could cover a few songs, and that might become a little bit more clearer to the viewers of what I'm trying to say. But it's an album that when I first heard it, I loved it. It's got all that jangly, clangy, dream pop elements, the chiming guitars, very delicate sort of guitar lines. Dustin Passeur's bass is very upfront. It's like almost McCartney-esque, you know how Paul McCartney plays that lead bass in the Beatles, and those beautiful birds type harmonies. But let's cover a couple of songs. The first one, Sleeping on My Own. So what do you think of this song?
Interestingly enough, it's a decent track. I think that every track after it is superior to it. It's one of those awkward albums where it starts off with what I feel like is the song that I think is my least favorite off of it. When I first played the album, I was like, okay, this sounds kind of like it's decent. It sounds like something that they would do. It almost sounds a little generic to their sound. And then I was kind of worried about the rest of the album. I was like, is it going to be kind of like autopilot for the rest of it? And no, it picks up quite a bit after that. There's a lot of bangers on this album, definitely.
Yeah.
But the first one, it's not bad. It's an okay song. It has again, you're going back to that minimalist. What Beach Fossils reminds me of is they're a band that is for the person who's waiting for a fix of dream pop that hasn't been around because the genre has kind of like not been really prominent for a few decades. And like if somebody's a fan of like Ride was like really Birds heavily influenced, but they especially with the harmonies going on in the band, but they had that fuzz. Beach Fossils doesn't have that fuzz. Beach Fossils is like if you remove the fuzz from Ride and you just sort of have more of that reverby, ethereal, echoey sound of like the Cocteau Twins. I don't know if the Cocteau Twins made a splash in Australia or not.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not a commercial splash, but definitely in indie circles. And to just go on your point, it's sort of like the Jesus and the Mary chain with our fuzz. Imagine that. Then you're kind of in this wheelhouse.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
Dream Pop 2, just for the viewer, it's a bit of a elusive like title for because a lot of times like a band will do when I think of dream pop, like I can't this besides like Cocteau Twins gets labeled as like shoegaze and dream pop. And I think of like certain like songs that got big, like Dreams by the Cranberries and Fade Into You, Mazzy Star. Anything that sounds like it was almost performed in like in a cathedral, and it actually makes it, there's an ethereal like sort of like dreamy element to it, but it kind of like has that dreaminess going on more so than being dominated by chugging and jamming, where like they're just looking down at their shoes and jamming away and just feeling it like that. Like I don't think anything on like Bly Buddy Valentine's Love List would be considered dream pop. But there's shoegaze bands or dream pop bands that get labeled as the same.
Yeah, they're sort of interchangeable, and there's only a couple of degrees of separation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the first song, so I'm a little bit contradictory to you. I think that this is the song that they had to do just to say we're back. It's the trademark song and the sound that they've done so many times previously, but I think they had to do it as the opener simply just to make a statement of intent. This is us. And, you've got all the elements. You've got the wistful vocals, the ethereal sound, the harmonies that underpin that sound like honey. And then you've got those beautiful guitars that are just chiming away atmospherically. And, the lyrics are kind of simple, but they say a lot. And it's very now. And it also was very much a time capsule of the fears and trepidations that people had during COVID, because I think that, I'm not sure, I haven't read the backstory, but I get the feel there's a lot of COVID vibe about this. This is Brooklyn, this is New York. People, it's a very, like, imagine New York is a very social city. It's one of the most, it's like you put your finger in an electric socket. Now you imagine that all these creative people, all these people are locked up during COVID, and then, it's over and they sort of reacquaint themselves. This is the album, the theme that I get from this album, that people are letting loose. And Sleeping on My Loan, he goes, can't forget, this is a lyric, can't forget, leave me all alone, I'm okay. So there are still people that are scarred from that experience. So this is Peter Kerr's take. I mean, if we interview Dustin Passeur, he might have a different take on it completely. But hey, it's my interpretation of it, and that's the beauty about music. You interpret what you will, but I get that sort of vibe about it. And maybe it's not the best song on the album, but it's certainly the one that they probably had to do as the first track on the album to say, we're back 6 years to the day. And this is our sound. And now here's the rest of it.
That's a good take on it. Yeah, it's impossible to separate COVID from the fact that, because that was the big thing that happened in the past like 6 years. I did do a little bit of research into interviews on him on when he wrote the album, and Dustin mentioned that pre-COVID, when he was working on this album, like in 2019 and such, he everything came to a halting stop. Obviously, I remember I was going to go see them live, because the Two Peas in a Pod, the other band that came out at the same time, I think they're the same label. They released their debuts within a month of each. I gotta get you into this band, Wild Nothing. Same thing. One guy writing everything afterwards. Like they developed the band. Self-titled debut comes out within a month or so of each other the same year, and the lead composer in that band, they're best friends. So they were going to go on a 10-year commemorative anniversary of both bands. And I was like, this is great. Two of my favorite bands are going to be touring. It's going to be great. It's 2020, blah, blah, blah. Halting stuff. And Dustin said that when things just came to a pause, luckily, I guess he had some money saved up and whatnot. And so he didn't have to really worry as much as other people did to sort of like keep himself afloat financially. He had just had a daughter. So he had this period of just sort of, like we all did, a pause. And I guess when they regrouped to start working on the album, like in 2021 or whatever, they noticed that a bunch of the songs they had written for what would end up becoming Bunny were really slow and mellow. And it's you're right on the money. We're talking about how COVID influenced this, but the way that he was saying it is that there's an element to this album, maybe like half the songs on it are kind of like post-COVID, has a post-COVID element where obviously like it's influenced by COVID, but it's like they're uppity songs. He said that they started writing more upbeat tunes because after everything just slowed down, they're like, wow, we've been just writing this mellow stuff for that. We need to get stuff to get us all pepped up and on the go and return. And we need a kind of that shot in the morning of espresso or whatever. New York, interesting enough, a New York band sounds so much like California too. That's an interesting thing. It's obviously like on purpose, but I appreciate that they do have these upbeat songs. I think some of the more upbeat songs in this album are the ones that are my favorites.
Well, that's a little segue into the next song that I want to talk to you. And unabashedly, this is probably my favorite song of the year so far. Folks, I feel so strongly to it. Run to the Moon. It's a killer of a track. So you've got this acoustic chord progression, and it gives away to these really weird bended notes. The notes are kind of bent, and that's a prevalent in shoegaze. You know how they bend notes and bend sounds?
Oh yeah.
And it's all the way through. And the thing that I like about this song, and I've played it again and again and again, is the chord progressions are weird. You think the song's gonna, okay, you know how there's certain songs and you follow the progression when you're listening it to the first time, you're gonna go, oh, it's gonna go in this direction. Well, this song goes in the exact direction that you wouldn't expect. And that's what makes a great song, makes it interesting and creative and brave. The lyrics in this song is about staying out all night, acting stupid, having fun till the sun is coming up. It's sort of like, I wouldn't call it a hangover song, but it's coming out of a fog. You've had a bender.
Yeah.
You've been partying with your friends. So can you imagine? This is setting the scene. You come out of COVID, you're partying for the first time, and the sun's coming up and the haze there's starting to be clarity, whether you've been on, drinking or whatnot, and the haze is lifting. And that's, to me, what this sounds. And it's got this beautiful, lush chorus, run to the moon. It feels like I'm living in another world. I love this. I just think it is just divine. I love it.
Have you seen the music video yet?
No. And sometimes when I do albums and I sometimes I want to listen to it and picture it in my own head before I look at the videos. I do that deliberately. I will catch up with the videos afterwards.
Yeah,
I guess other folks, they do their own thing,
Yeah, I listened to the album before I caught. There's like 4 music videos already for this album.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you see if this is your song of the year, wait until you see the music video, because within the first few seconds, I'm not going to spoil it. It's you could tell that they're on drugs. I mean, they say it in the lyric, right? They mention that like the first line or something like that. I love that song too. My notes on that.
It's folks. This is youth, and this is this is what people are today. It's like the youth talking, and it's just a realistic document of people letting loose.
Yeah. This isn't sort of like Sid Vicious with the needle and sticking out of his arm type of depression type of deal.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know if you feel this way, but the note that I had on that, as soon as I heard that song, for one, it's a great song. Awesome. Love it. The first thing I heard when it starts off is it reminds me of, do you know that song Something in the Air by Thunderclap Newman?
Yes. And there's another band that you would never have heard of called Golden Horse from New Zealand. And there's a song of theirs called Maybe Tomorrow, which there's a bit of a melody line that is very similar. So if there's any New Zealand viewers, you might be aware of what I'm talking about. But Oh God, I love this song. I really do. It is.
Yeah.
It's up there with the Peter Kerr song of the year. And there's so anyway.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they were listening to something in the air because I think that was like one of the biggest hits in America in '69. So it just reminds
Yeah.
you of Woodstock. Wait until you
Yeah.
see the video.
Yeah, I will. I will straight after this show. But yeah, there you go. Alrighty. Don't Fade Away. Up tempo. She's Novocaine. It's all I need to ease the pain. I love that the vocal phrasing is slightly behind the beat. And that's what I love about this album. They just take these artistic options that are just a little bit peculiar, a bit different. You know, instead of doing the basic chord or progressions A to Z, they'll take it in a different direction. If they need to play behind the beat, if they need to put the bass up and the vocals behind, they will do that. And folks, it's a headphones album. Put the headphones on, close your eyes, and you can hear these subtle instrumentational choices that are just divine. These lovely little guitar arpeggios all the way through. What do you think of this song?
Oh, I love it. That was the first single that I heard. Yeah, don't see this music video. I don't like the music video at all. It's boring. It has a bad vibe to it. But the song is it's probably the song I listened to the most off the album. So it's definitely it reminds me of the Gin Blossoms.
Okay.
Like I don't know if they had any hits in Australia, but back in the 90s, like the Gin.
No.
Yeah, they're like a 90s alternative band that probably had like 5 regular radio hits back in the early to mid 90s. And they were known for having the jangle pop, jangle rock, like I guess like genre tagged on them. And when you vocally, they don't sound like that band. But as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, this is like up tempo and it has that jangle vibe of like a really good Gin Blossoms song. I love it. Like I defy the listener or the viewer to go not listen to like Found Out About You by Gin Blossoms and listen to Don't Fade Away by Beach Fossils and not see there's some sort of like a connection there. So yeah, nice. I love it. It definitely sounds like one of those songs that he wrote after they got back after COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As I said, it's like they got out of their houses, their units, their apartments, and the sun is shining. And freedom. I like Just Like the Setting Sun. I put down This Is Just Glorious Psych. And a lot of that's one word we haven't used, psych. So Tame Impala, what it used to be before they discovered dance electro beats, that sort of modern edge psych, the ethereal vocals on top of a very delicate guitar line. And I'm saying that a lot. There's a lot of delicate guitar lines that add to the minimalist feel to it. And then that beautiful note bending,
Yeah.
I wrote the bottom end has a slightly dance beat, a bit of a groove, and it reminded me of Stone Roses' first album.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely has that she bangs the drum type of thing going on in the background. Yeah, no, I see that. I hear that. Yeah. I love this song's awesome too. You're not going to hear me say too much bad about everything. The first song, like I said, the first song is the one I was kind of like, after I listened to this album so many times, I just want to skip to Run to the Moon and because it's strong. Like
Run to the Moon. I can't say enough good words about that. Anything is great. The vocals are held back, kind of muffled. This reminded me of the Charlatans. Some of their work. The guitars are up and Dustin's bass line. He's a really fine bass player and I love his bass playing. It's very melodic and it reminds me of, I'm relating it to the Beatles because I can't help myself. Everything relates to the Beatles in some way, where Paul's got the bass lines up front and center and Dustin's playing is all up front and center. And looking at the notes, looks like he's a instrumentalist, and he did the majority of the bass playing on this album. So
Does he
any
have does he because I know the touring I don't know if it's just a touring bass player, but Jack Smith is the guy who handles bass on the tour. Does he see, this is why there's so little to read on them. Does he still dominate and play all the instruments on a lot of the instruments on the album?
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And did you get this? You know, the old. This is in the
I haven't.
CD.
No,
So
no,
we'll
no.
talk about the design. Very unusual, very strange, and
He actually
all
has.
the
It's actually a
lyrics.
squeaky. It's a squeaky toy that he actually has. He showed it on a live stream I saw. It's like an old toy from his childhood, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go to another song, and this is a bit darker. It's called "Tough Love," and the lyrics go, "Tough love, drink drunk, you're not my friend." So there's a little bit of darkness in this. This is kind of a little bit of a reassessment of friendship. And, you know, are you my friend? And, you know, reassessing like we're social, we're drinking, and this sort of behavior is happening. And who are you? Where is the relationship? So it's not just about coming out and celebrating and partying, you know, coming out of COVID or whatnot, but there's also a reassessment of values, human values and human relationships. But the way, as I said, the lyrics, the way they're written are very simple and direct, but at the same time, they say a lot. Sometimes, you know, you don't have to say a lot of words to say a lot. And this is what Dustin does in the lyrics of this song. Do you like Tough Love?
Yeah, this one sounds kind of like now that you mentioned it, like even because the lyrics, I didn't dive into the lyrics too much on this album yet. Some of the times the harmonies I'm just enjoying the vocal and the harmony sort of and experiencing it with the overdubs and all the kind of the reverb that's going on, that it's almost like I don't care what they're saying, like it's just hitting the pleasure center. This one has Smith's vibe, like because it just has like they don't have power chords going on in this band. It's very much like them picking up guitars and doing these like simple rhythm melodies. But the fact that you have that type of almost like an upbeat guitar part, but then it's kind of got the dark lyrics that always reminds, especially since this sounds kind of like late 80s and 80s. I know the Smiths is an influence on them. Like that's what it reminds me of, like that Morrissey element to where he'll sing about something that's not necessarily happy, but it's being sung on a happy beat.
Yeah. I did a show with John Clauser from the Contrarians, and we were talking about the topic of bands where the music sounds really happy and it's written in a major key. But when you look at the lyrics, they're the polar opposite. They're dark, depressing, and downright kind of scary. So it's almost like a Trojan horse. You're listening to all this sunny, ethereal type of harmonies. But when you read the lyric sheet, it says something a lot different. It's a little bit darker. And there's an element in this album.
Yeah. I think I saw that one. I might have saw that one. There's a lot of videos. I've seen a lot of your videos.
It hasn't come out yet. I spoke to him this morning. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Yeah, because I know
That's
that you
cool.
definitely did a video. I thought it was you that did a video recently, and one of the songs that got mentioned was "Every Breath You Take" by The Police. That's kind of like a poster child for a dark lyric.
Yeah, I know
a song that sounds uplifting.
We're going off on a tangent there, but bloody hell, David, people were playing this at their weddings.
I know.
It's about a stalker.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Talk about putting a curse on your relationship.
I know. Yeah. Hey, ironic.
Yeah, not the Alanis Morissette version of ironic. Anyway.
Correct.
Numb. I like that song a lot too. So that starts off with a single bass line and has these echoey notes, and the band comes all together in, and there's a subtle fuzz. This is the song that has a little bit of lineage to shoegaze because you got that fuzz. And my thoughts about this was, if Jesus and the Mary Chain rein back the distortion, rein back the fuzz, this is what they would sound like.
Yes, I agree 100%. This is the only song on it that sounds like if it could possibly have came out in 1991, and that you could confuse me. Everything else sounds like, yeah, the production is very polished. This one has this one has that distorted guitar that's low in the back,
Yeah.
playing rhythm. But what's hype in the mix is the crisp, like acoustic electric like guitar notes. And I love that juxtaposition. Like, it's probably my favorite song on the album. I love this song.
Yep. Well, this
Big
is my
time.
other. This is another Pete's pick off the album. So I'm right there with you, bro. I think it's a really, really good track, and the double, the triple tracking of the vocals. I don't know how many tracking, but it's. I'm sure it's just Dustin. Doing multi-tracking his vocals, not the other members of the band, but it's divine. And the weaving guitars, little weaving. You know, you got the chiming and the different sort of textures of the guitar. That's a good word to describe this band. Texture. There's texture, isn't there?
Yeah. It's definitely part of the Beach Fossils song that have the interwoven
Yep.
a couple of lead guitars going back and forth and such.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome song. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you've got Waterfall. This is really stripped back lo-fi. It's, like most albums, when they finish up, they do some epic power ballad. Not that this band's a power ballad, but you know what I mean? They do something really epic, really strong, really dramatic. Not these folks. They just do the beat of their own drum. And let's finish off with something stripped back, lo-fi. And, you got the vocals that sound like they were, recorded in an echo chamber, really dreamy, haunting. And, and I love the outro right at the end. You got this little piano line. And you finish the album, and from my perspective, you just kind of want more.
Yeah, I love the way that the album ends. I was actually paying it. I thought the same thing you did. I was noticing how it ended on such a slow and subtle like moment. And then I think it's one of the only songs, if not the only song of the album, that has piano on it, which is a change from Somersault. One thing I forgot to mention too is, like, in late 2021, they did release an album of piano, like remakes of Dustin's favorite tracks, and it's all like jazz piano songs with him with a real sounding like a real jazz piano sound, but him doing new vocals over like 8 tracks. And it's interesting. It's him just trying to always do something that is going to keep the people guessing. Like, well, we were only thinking, like, we totally weren't expecting that at all. I think that the last song is one of the top songs on the album too. I think that my top songs on it are "Don't Fade Away," "Run to the Moon," "Numb," and "Waterfall." I think those are my top songs on the album.
Yeah, mine are "Run to the Moon," "Numb," and "Waterfall," top 3. But for the points victory, "Run to the Moon," it's killer. But yes, I love "Waterfall," the closing track. I find it emotionally affecting. And the piano just adds a lot of gravitas, a lot of emotional weight. I like it a lot. Well, there you go. I think we've really covered this album really, really well. There you go, Beach. This is a really quirky. I'm not sure I groove on it, but it is what it is. Maybe it shows a little bit of sense of humor. And the album is called Bunny. And as I showed you, they had a lyric sheet insert. And there's Beach Fossils. Got that from my local record store. Now, my friend, compare it to Somersault. So how does this, at this point in time, how does that compare? Because that is the masterpiece in your view. So, just how do you think it compares?
Well, let me try to be analogous. Let me try to compare Beach Fossils to the Beatles. The Beatles are a great band, right? Usually pretty like common that people know the Beatles story to just sort of like show storyline. The album Somersault is like their Revolver or their Sergeant Pepper's. It's where they stepped into saying that we are a four-piece band. We want to become maximalists with what we can put on a record. And from a band that had such like that little indie lo-fi album in 2010, for them to be doing like their third full length and to just sort of like throw the kitchen sink, like the song Saint Ivy has flute, it has piano, it has a string accompaniment, it has this Abbey Road-esque like George Harrison guitar solo that comes in, tones that come in at the end of it. The song Closer Everywhere is dominated by harpsichord. There's harpsichord on that album. There's like a 2 minute, little less than 2 minute song called Rise, which is like a nice instrumental with a spoken word type of thing going on in it, where there's no singing vocals. It's not like it's not a song. Social Jet Lag has jazzy piano on it, where there's no guitars at all besides the bass guitar. There's no guitars at all, and there's different piano going on, and it has flute, and just the bass and the drum going on in it. So they used the harpsichord, and they used the string accompaniments and the cello and all this violin and stuff like that. They use that on other songs on the album. So they really were just a band at that point where it was like, wow, they're really able to step out of their own small box, I guess, as being like an indie rock, indie pop group, and successfully make this transition to sort of an art rock band. That album gets labeled as baroque because it has all those different instruments, and it has that emphasis on the vocal harmonies. When you wait 6 years and then they basically just say, we're going back to what we were before that, it's a little jarring to me, because I was expecting them to maybe make a double album or something that was going to be a much larger statement of them being able to grow even more. And I guess because, and Dustin said this, he said, because that one we did so much, we always got to do something completely different. So as a contrast, this is going to be another minimal album. If this was, it almost sounds like Beach Fossils by numbers. This is an album that I would have expected to be like the 10th album in a band's catalog.
Yes.
When they kind of run out of ideas, and then somebody sits them down and says, listen, you don't need any new ideas. You just need to go back to what purely made you a great band and do like this year's version of it. And it's a really good album. But what leaves me thinking is like, am I going to have to wait another 6 years for an album? What about all that promise where they can flex all of that stuff that all those indie bands weren't able to do and transition that way? They flexed that muscle and they did it so well. So they're just, I want them to do that again, So that's sort of like the dichotomy I have with this album, where like, I really like this album. I keep listening to it. I'm going to keep listening to it. The band is one of my favorites, but I guess because they had a 10 out of a 10 before, and it was so different in their catalog, and that's what made it so unique, that I kind of want them, I hope that they continue to do, I don't know, I hope they continue to flex that creative muscle and not wait so long.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, let's face it, the Somersault was very much a lot of homage to the Beatles. Like, you had a song like Saint Ivy, where there's a piano line, it kicks in, and you can sort of visualize Paul McCartney playing the upright piano in the studio with a big smile on his face. Or down the line, the propulsive bass line, and it's sort of like it's got a little bit of that influence between New Order and Tame Impala. They were really wearing their influences sort of on their sleeve across that Somersault album, and it was kind of alchemy. But bands progress, and I think this is more lo-fi, but at the same minimalist, but at the same time, it's in that dream pop or dream guitar, jangly rock type of genre. But they're doing subtle things with their soundscape, the bending of the notes, the chordal progression. Lyrically, it's a lot darker, and lyrically, it's talking about feelings and emotions, and it's very contemporary. You know, if you want to have a document of what it is as a youth living in New York, I live in Sydney, I'm probably talking out of my hat here, but I'm just imagining living in New York with all these frustration, the angst of what has been happening over the last 7 years. This album is perfectly sums it up.
Yeah. Can't you know, I sound like I'm being harsh on the album and everything, and I probably would give it like an 8 out of 10. That's nothing to cry tears for, right?
No.
But yeah, but like it's sort of like I accept it. It would have felt better if this album came out in 2015, in between Clash the Truth and Somersault, and then I'd have my full-on art rock band going prog and popping on an album every 2 years, and I suppose that there's my sort of like I'm disgruntled about is more about the lack of output, as opposed, and I'm taking it out on some of the material. So it's a very good album. Like I like it quite a bit, and it's probably going to continue to grow on me.
Absolutely.
I don't want to stop listening to it. It's a summer album too.
Well, I'm in winter, and yes, it is summer, and it keeps me warm just listening to it. So yeah, I get that totally. And mate, I tell you what, if I ask you in 6 months, you'll probably go higher. I have confidence that you probably would score it higher. It's a grower, and it's one that you need to do, you know, probably repeat listens. I'd give it about an 8.5. But you know, it's a grower. It really is. But for me, it's got the song of the year thus far, Run to the Moon. Check it out, folks. I'll check out the video on David recommendation as soon as I finish this clip. Looking forward to that. But as always, you bring home the bacon, mate. Thank you very much. You know, you selected this album to do a review, and I'm really thankful that you did, because it's a real pleasure to listen to, and I'm looking forward to some more music that you'll put my way, and we'll do some more reviews over the rest of the year. So thank you very much. You can see David on the Contrarians and various other shows. And as for me, this show's called Rock Daydream Nation. You know, wouldn't give us a sub or a like, or tell us what you think of Beach Fossils. And I really appreciate and enjoy reading people's comments. But one thing's guaranteed, me and David will do a show sometime soon about something. Check you out. See ya. Bye.
Thank you.